Let's dive into team building and rotations with Zeke. He works in many comps, so let's look at the teams for Physical, Flame, and Frost. Why no votes? Zeke primarily enhances damage dealt by the on-field weapon. However, in a current vote team, Fenrir's A3 is responsible for a huge portion of damage, but it is procced with Rubilia on field, so you don't get the bonus there. In a physical team, you'll use Zeke, Janana, and Fiona, with Zeke's trait. You will want to use Fiona and Zeke's matrices for off-field, and then Lyra matrices on Zeke. We use Wellspring and Maelstrom in this comp, and as with any team without Fiona's trait, Wellspring is more effective than Hydro Focus. Unfortunately, due to the power synergy between Zeke and Janana, there aren't really many viable alternatives for this comp. For Titan stats, normal attack damage is king. On any piece where you don't have access to normal attack damage, weak point damage boost and generic damage boost are your other options. And for Micro Reactor, just run Discharge, I guess. The physical rotation is extremely straightforward. Start out with Fiona's Discharge and skill, followed by that of Janana. Pop Maelstrom and use Zeke's skill, and then auto-attack for 25 seconds. Alternatively, you can use the auto-attack to dodge combo to hug the cactus closer, so more of the Dark Souls hit, but the difference of this is minor. When Maelstrom has roughly 5 seconds left on the cooldown, discharge to Janana and use her skill, followed by that of Fiona, before repeating the rotation with Zeke DPS. Let's look at the home rotation in action. For Flame, you'll be using Zeke, Liuhu, and Lan, with Liuhu's trait, which is preferred over Zeke's trait. Zeke and Liuhu matrices are ideal for the offhand, while Lyra and Zamir, or Lyra and Cobalt, are preferred on Liuhu herself. Since Liuhu is the main DPS, normal attack damage is the preferred Titan stat. Here's a table of the estimated value of each rare stat value. With the recent buff, Annabella's value is theoretically very close to Liuhu, and she could fit in the team in her place. Fiona over Lan can work for the Liuhu team, and would use Wellspring and Hydro Focus, though Lan works better when both are at max investment. The rotation for Flame is extremely similar to what it was before. Start out with Zeke's skill, waiting for the animation to finish. Then use Lan's discharge and skill. On the first rotation only, do one auto hold into dodge combo from Liuhu before tapping her skill, repeating the auto hold to dodge combo until her skill's cooldown is roughly 3 to 4 seconds. At that point, discharge to Zeke and jump cancel it, and then use his skill and immediately cancel that by discharging to Lan. Use her skill followed by Liuhu's, where you repeat the rotation with her main DPS combo. Let's see an iteration of the rotation loop. Finally, we have a Frost team. While Zeke doesn't directly buff Frost, Yulan's DPS is concentrated into on-field damage, which is greatly enhanced by Zeke's kit. Here, we'll have Zeke, Martial Yulan, and Fiona, with Yulan's traits. The ideal matrices to run are Yulan's, Fiona's, and Lyra Samir. For rare stats, since Zeke increases all of Yulan's damage as opposed to mainly the skill damage, the ideal rare stat is just the generic damage buff, or weak point damage buff as well. Skill and dodge fall fairly close to each other, with dodge and discharge damage as the lowest priority. Alice is a functional replacement to Fiona, and you get Frost Resonance this way, although you'll need to swap out Fiona's matrix for either Icarus or Alice's, which is quite a downgrade. Like with the Flame team, the Frost team's rotation is pretty much the same as before, except replacing Alice with Zeke. Heck, you even cancel their discharge and skill in the same fashion. Start out with Zeke's skill, followed by Fiona's skill and discharge. Switch to Yulan, doing her dodge to auto attack combo, and for the first rotation only, use her skill at 3 stacks to proc her A1 buff. A general guideline, copy-pasted from my Yulan video, is provided here for when to use your skill optimally with relics in mind. For more information, you should check that video out. Here's a bit of the rotation in action. This wraps up the team comp section. Now, how does it all compare? We'll take a look in the next section. Disclaimer! Remember to take theory crafting with a grain of salt, as it's just that, theory. It's impossible to be perfectly accurate for every situation, but it gives us a good idea of where things stand. How do the various Zeke comps compare with each other? Let's examine the following table, which shows the total DPM of the various max investment comps. The physical comp is the strongest, as one would imagine it should be, though the Frost team surprisingly cuts in between, despite how Zeke wasn't made to synergize with Frost in the first place. In reality, physical can gain almost a 10% advantage over Frost, due to how a majority of damage is tied to normal attacks, so physical gets the largest gain from Titan stats compared to other options, especially Frost, which has to settle for generic damage or weak points. Flame teams are slightly behind, but still very strong, with both Annabella and Liu He being fairly close in terms of their overall potential. Let's now look at the big picture. At the maximum investment, Zeke power creeps the previous Frost meta comp by a bit, though a larger gap comes from Titan stats as mentioned previously, as you can now get level 6 normal attack buff. Zeke's Flame teams are a decent improvement to Flame, and actually do not use Fiona at all, for better or for worse. While the max potential of Frost is stronger than the previous, it's not too much of a jump due to how Frost was just the previous top comp. What about at lower investment levels? At the Dolphin investment level that has A6 characters with no limited matrices, the power of various Zeke comps are all quite close, with Flame taking the lead over Physical. Physical doesn't have any resist shred, so you may see higher numbers on the Cactus, but the other comps climb ahead with resistance in play. With A3 characters, the Physical comp starts to fall flat compared to the Flame ones, as Zeke loses a bunch of value without A5 Genono, and Flame units, comparatively, are much less advancement dependent. With A1 characters and 0-star matrices, the graph looks pretty much the same, but I'll put them both side by side for reference. Overall, Zeke creates many viable team comps for several elements, and is a fairly well-rounded unit. While at lower investments, other Zeke comps, particularly Flame, overtake Physical, he's still a great pickup and pushes low investment Physical to a much more relevant level than it was in before. And that's it for my Zeke analysis. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!